Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. And welcome to the last panel of the day and the last panel of the forum. I would like to first mention that we have a Latin name or Latin origin theme of the panel, Vis Pacem para Bellum. A name or some words that are coming from early 4-5 century, which were twisted along the history, along the years, and came up in different forms up to today. So our panel will focus on this theme: how better are we prepare for peace, being also prepared for war, or how do we build the peace, being prepared for war. So for this panel, we have five special guests. One of them is not present today, but we will have a video that will encompass his message coming from the NATO headquarters. So the first speaker, even digitally, is Mr. Angus Lapsley, who is the Assistant Secretary General for Defense Policy and Planning. He's working in the international staff, and he's also conveying to all of us his apologies that he could not attend this important forum due to the preparations for the NATO summit and also some other commitments. We had invited also the Romanian Chief of Defense, General Gheorghiță Vlad, who's also apologizing because he's involved with another high-level commitment, and he will be replaced by his deputy, Lieutenant General Dragoș Iacob, who is our guest tonight. He's a general that went through all the levels of command, from holding position, command position, from tactical to operational and strategic level. He's Royal Defense College graduate and holding a master's degree in strategy and security at the King's College in London. We have from Greece General Dimitrios Houpis, who's the Chief of Defense, I would say the fresh Chief of Defense of Greece, who is by trade a signal officer. He graduated with honor all the schools and courses of his branch. He holds a PhD with distinction on information dissemination systems from the Department of Electronic and Computer Engineering of the National Technical University of Athens, and also holds a master's degree on strategy and diplomacy and strategic planning and crisis management. We have Major General John Mead, UK, from GFC Naples, as an artillery general, artillery officer, who was part of the Royal Horse Artillery and seven para Royal Horse Artillery across multiple theaters, including the Balkans, Iraq, and he also have 5 deployments to Afghanistan. He also attended the Advanced Command Staff College in Australia, where he received a master's degree in management and defense studies. He recently has served in NATO, both as Chief of Staff Allied Rapid Reaction Corps and also Deputy Chief of Staff Plans. His current positions at GFC Naples being mainly responsible for the regional plans for NATO South and East. We have also a distinguished invitee today, Mr. Stephen Covington, who is the Strategic and International Affairs Advisors coming from Supreme Allied Commander Europe, from SHAPE, where he served as a special advisor to 11 SACEURs over the course of 30 years at SHAPE. He has advised many SACEURs, Secretary Generals, and other senior NATO political and military leaders on strategic, political, military issues during peace, crisis, and conflict, and developed a wide range of SACEUR's initiative pertaining to alliance policy, operations, partnership, and adaptation. And I would like to emphasize that Mr. Covington is the person who was the main coordinator of deterrence and defense concept for the allied space. And this concept is right at this moment the most important one, which is under the phase of the implementation. So these are the panelists we have today. And I would like just to set up a little bit the scene. I am just 2 months and a half coming from Brussels, where I embraced the NATO 360 degrees approach. And I very much argued at home and said that we, the Romanians, although we are very much concentrated, focused in our area here in the Black Sea and the Balkans region, we have to be very careful and come up into the NATO point of view, looking towards all the directions, and try to avoid any kind of competition of resources, of competition of attention, or competition of deployment. So NATO 360 degrees accepted by all the allies. However, we have to pay attention very much to the most important threats. And for the moment, Ukraine is paying attention and is having all the attention from everybody. Obviously, Arctic has a lot of challenges. North Atlantic, of course. North Atlantic with the underwater infrastructure. We have the Mediterranean. We have the Black Sea. And not to mention again about the Ukraine, which is holding the most important subjects of the days. So in this kind of environment, we have to add also the Middle East, the development of Middle East, and also what may occur into the Asia-Pacific region, which is also a region of high concerns, mainly for the United States, but also for all the allies, because everything is happening in the world. We, being so much interconnected, may reverberate in all the other parts of the world. So we cannot tackle in isolation any kind of threat and vulnerabilities. I would like first to offer the possibility to play the video in which Mr. Angus Lapsley will deliver his speech. Please play the video.
George, thank you very much indeed for inviting me to speak to this forum. I know what a great event it is, and I'm so sorry that I couldn't be with you there in person today. But as you can imagine, we are now incredibly busy in the run-up to the Washington summit here in NATO headquarters. So let me just say something about that summit and what I think it means for the regions that you're talking about today, the Black Sea and the Balkan regions. So the summit in Washington, it's a historic event. We're going to be celebrating 75 years of the most successful defense alliance in history. It is a moment to celebrate, but it's also a moment to look at the really tough challenges we face right now. And there are two, and they're both deeply relevant to the regions that you're talking about. The first, of course, is supporting Ukraine as it resists this brutal Russian war of aggression. And I think all allies are united in realizing that we have to do everything we possibly can to support Ukraine. If Ukraine loses this war, it makes the security situation for all of us in the alliance much, much more serious. And it sets dreadful precedents for the world more widely. So there is no option. Ukraine has to win, and we have to do everything we can to help Ukraine win. So I think a lot of the focus of this summit will be about how we do that. How do we make sure that we keep the flow of support, including, of course, weapons into Ukraine? How do we make sure our training efforts are as efficient as possible? How do we keep financial support going? And there's frankly nothing we can do for the security of your region more than to make sure that we succeed in those endeavors. But the second thing that we're going to be doing at this summit is making sure that our own defence, our own deterrence is as solid and as firm as it can possibly be. And we took historic decisions on that at the Madrid summit and then the Vilnius summit. And the good news is that NATO deterrence has held. It's held for 75 years. And even today, we can see Russia being very careful not to provoke NATO directly. But we have to make sure that that remains the case, in particular when we look at a Russia that is clearly very aggressive, very prone to risk-taking, and is investing heavily in its armed forces for the future. Actually, both those problems are united by certain themes. They're united by the need for unity and political will, and those themes will be at the heart of the Washington summit. They're also united by the need to invest, to build the capabilities that we need for the future, to invest in industrial capacity, to allow us to keep going and to sustain those forces, particularly in areas like ammunition. And they also ask us to think hard about how do we think about risk-taking? How do we think about deterrence practice in the modern world? But we are putting in place a much strengthened and reinforced architecture for defence and deterrence in the Euro-Atlantic area. We have a set of plans now, including, of course, a plan for the defence of Southeast Europe, including the Balkans. That plan is owned and developed by the Joint Force Headquarters in Naples under Admiral Munch. And it is, to be honest, it's the most sophisticated and most comprehensive set of plans for the defence of that part of the Euro-Atlantic area that we've had since the end of the Cold War, and of course the first time that for many countries in the region that they have been part of that kind of collective defence planning. So it's a really big step forward for the region, and of course it looks at how do you deal with the Black Sea, how do you deal with possible instability and problems or provocations in the Balkans region. With those plans comes the reinforcement of our command and control arrangements. For example, how do we look after logistics and enablement and make sure that we can move things effectively? So a lot of very interesting discussion at the moment, for example, about how do we have corridors for mobility to bring forces through the Aegean into the Black Sea region, or from the Adriatic across the Balkans Peninsula into the Black Sea region. These are the kind of granular changes that really matter to defence and deterrence. And then, of course, we are building the forces that we need. And allies have already, over the last 12 months, they have declared far more forces to Saka to make available for him to defend Europe than we've done at any point since the end of the Cold War. But we're also focused on where we know we need to be in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years' time. And we're setting demanding targets for allies to deliver on capability improvements, modernizing their forces, expanding them, and making sure that they're genuinely interoperable and they can fight together. All of this comes together in your part of Southeast Europe. I think it's a critical geographical area for the alliance, and it quite rightly gets a lot of attention. There is very wide support for the fact that NATO still has an operational role in Kosovo, and that KFOR mission is extremely important. But we can also see the region playing a really active role in shaping the alliance's future. For example, North Macedonia recently hosted the NATO Nuclear Policy Symposium, a first that event has been held in the Balkans. And countries like Romania and Bulgaria, Greece, Turkey, they are all at the forefront of driving forward policy making and thinking about defence and deterrence in the alliance. So I think you've got a great set of issues to talk about today. I think you are both, at the heart of quite a few of the risks that we have to think about and manage as an alliance. But as a result of that, you're also at the heart of the rethinking of the solutions and the capabilities that we can bring to bear to make sure that defence and deterrence is there. I'll end where I started, Ukraine. It is inconceivable that Ukraine loses this war. That's why the alliance is all in on this. And there will be, I'm sure, lots that comes out of the Washington summit that maps out how we are going to continue to support Ukraine, step that up, and also how Ukraine can progress in its journey towards what everybody in the alliance agrees is its natural resting place, which is as a part of NATO, as a full member in future. So I hope you have a great event today. We are with you here in headquarters in spirit and in mind, if not in person. Thank you very much.
I have to convey our virtual thanks to Mr. Angus Lapsley for his remarks, as he find his time to deliver this speech. Anyway, I will come back to our distinguished panelists tonight, and I would like to start with the first question. Basically, the title of this panel: Are we preserving the peace, being prepared for war? And I'm looking for the first two panelists here close to me. And I'm waiting for them to deliver more from a national point of view perspective, while looking to the next two other panelists, more looking into the NATO side of the business, one from the operational level, GFC Naples, and also Mr. Covington expressing his point of view from the strategic level, from the strategic command shape. So, General Hupis, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. It's the last session. I'll try to be, let's say, focused on the target. Esteemed colleagues, it's an honor to address you today at the Black Sea and the Balkan Security Forum, a pivotal event for discussing the multifaceted security challenges besetting in the eastern flank and beyond. First, allow me to thank the New Strategy Center for this invitation and for the very, very meticulously organized these forum events. Diverse perspectives are invaluable to our understanding of these pressing matters, and I eagerly anticipate hearing them. To begin with, the subject, which is Eastern flank, is strategically important to NATO, serving as a critical buffer zone between the alliance and Russia. The Russian invasion of Ukraine has significantly heightened our security concerns, prompting NATO and its member states to reassess and bolster their defense posture and capabilities. The new defense posture agreed upon at the Madrid summit, as you already know, and reinforced at the Vilnius summit last year, in a testament to our collective commitment and unity in strengthening our security. The invasion of Ukraine has not only become a catalyst for NATO defense policy on the eastern flank, but has also illuminated opportunities for enhancing our alliance. Let me highlight a few significant prospects that have emerged in the wake of Ukraine conflict. Firstly, Finland and Sweden accession to NATO marks a monumental shift. Before 2022, both nations maintained a cautious approach toward NATO membership, favoring strong cooperation over a formal alliance. Their swift accession has fortified NATO with their robust military capabilities, especially in Northeast, enhancing our collective defense posture against Russian leverage in the region. Secondly, the Russian invasion has accelerated the implementation of NATO new deterrence and defense concept, originally agreed upon in 2020. This strategic shift addresses previously identified gaps in our forces, plans, and command structures, reorganizing the agency and following Greece, of course, as an allied member, has proactively contributed to these efforts, underscoring the importance of national commitment and resource allocation. Furthermore, the alliance courageous decisions and increased defense spending. The collective determination has ushered in a new era for NATO's military reorganization, ensuring our preparedness, responsiveness, resilience, and last but not least, interoperability. As we navigate these changes, it is obvious that Russia will emerge and will act as a more formidable threat post-February 22. However, I'm confident in NATO multi-domain and 360 transformation in a more proactive and globally oriented alliance, reinforcing our historical reputation and military presence. General Bradley, the first chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States of Armed Forces, once said that amateurs talk for strategy while professionals talk logistics. This insight underscores the critical importance of logistics and reinforcement, particularly in SACEUR's area of responsibility, and more specifically, the eastern flank. Ensuring effective military mobility and secure routes for force movement, such as the Alexandroupolis land corridor, is paramount. Therefore, the cooperation established among allied nations, such as Romania, Bulgaria, and Greece, with the crucial support of the other nations, is enhancing these logical networks and supporting the allied full supply chain expansion through Alexandroupolis, exemplifies our collective resilience and operational readiness. Beyond the eastern flank, we must also address Russia's influence in Syria, Libya, the Middle East, North Africa, and the Sahel region. Monitoring the understanding Russian tactics in these areas is crucial for both forming strategic partnerships and preempting crises. Greece has historically maintained strong relations with nations in these regions, contributing to our comprehensive approach to security. These challenges of pervasive instability, terrorism, and revisionist ambitions, particularly from state and non-state actors, demand our attentions. Whereas NATO strengthens its eastern flank, addressing the southern threats remains a critical and ongoing effort. A coherent approach, 360, as already mentioned, response is already necessary. This approach acknowledges the interconnected nature of threats across different regions and involves a comprehensive assessment of the security landscape, the development of tailored strategies of each region, and last but not least, the coordination of our efforts to ensure a unified response. In the Middle East and North Africa, persistent turmoil, the existing conflicts, the civil wars in Syria, Libya, and Yemen underscore the need for a balanced and proactive NATO approach. We are particularly concerned about the spread of terrorism, the proliferation of weapons, and the impact of these conflicts on regional stability. Promptly addressing this crisis can mitigate their efforts on irregular migration, terrorism, and regional stability. A holistic response to these security challenges required promoting cohesion, solidarity, and respect within the alliance. Our strength lies in our unity, shared purpose, and fair burden sharing. Adherence to international law and NATO's fundamental principles and values, reaffirmed in the 2022 strategic concept, is essential to maintaining our credibility and effectiveness. To enhance our strategic message and public appeal, NATO must address new areas of concern, such as irregular migration and human trafficking, demonstrating our values, member states, and their citizens. In addition, increased cooperation with the EU can maximize resource efficiently and avoid unnecessary duplication of efforts, building on the distinct strengths of both organizations. In conclusion, considering the entire alliance security space, NATO must maintain a balanced policy on eastern and southern threats. Undeniably, we ensure our member states' continued stability and security by countering all challenges with a united front. NATO is already strategy-oriented and not crisis-oriented. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to our discussion and the valuable insights that will emerge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, General Hupis, for your insight. I would kindly invite now Lieutenant General Jakob to deliver his remarks.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, General Toader, for the kind introduction. What he did not mention is that I worked for him for like 2 years, sir, and it gives me great pleasure to thank you for your leadership and advice. The geopolitical reality at the eastern border of NATO and the EU, in the Black Sea region and Western Balkans, and across the globe has been reconfigured during the past 2 years. I want to point out one thing that everyone here is aware of. Defense is not only a military task. It is a multi-layered concern of both military and civilian, governmental and non-governmental agencies. This is the reason that allows us to dialogue and coordinate with each other to strengthen the national defense system and make it stronger and more capable of facing any security challenges. We know that warfare is based not only on a defensive system with strong and heavy capabilities and state-of-the-art weaponry, but also on a strong and supportive society with all its entities. Returning to the theme of this panel, we understand that NATO is itself a platform of political and military consensus of 32 states. We also all know about the huge reaction of the alliance after the Russian Federation started its war of aggression in Ukraine, including the Allied defensive measures applied on the eastern flank. From that moment, the Allied nations entered a new era of collective defense. NATO was undertaking the largest adaptation since the Cold War, including the implementation of the concept for deterrence and defense of the Euro-Atlantic area. This fundamental concept represents a significant breakthrough in the level of integration and planning of the Allied military activities. It seeks to counter threats by providing a common framework for deterrence and defense in peace, crisis, and war. The concept leverages a deliberate rhythm of military activity across all geographic areas of the alliance, as well as across all operational domains and functional areas: maritime, land, air, space, cyber, special operations, and enablement. The NATO strategic concept, endorsed by our heads of states and governments at the NATO summit in Madrid, spells out the strategic importance of the Western Balkans and the Black Sea, as well as the Allied commitment to support the Euro-Atlantic aspirations and of interested countries in these regions. All these decisions are the expression of an Allied solidarity and resolve, NATO's ability to adapt to the new security challenges generated by Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine. The Allies are currently in the last phase of increasing the executability of the new defense plans, providing everything our alliance needs to defend every inch of the NATO territory. Starting this year, the Allies conducted the largest NATO exercise since the end of the Cold War, exercise Steadfast Defender, the first live exercise to test our family of plans in Article 5 scenario. As we speak, actually, it's in the redeployment phase. In connection with exercise Steadfast Defender, we conducted the final phase of exercise Swift Response under the umbrella of Defender series of exercises led by United States Army in Europe and Africa. A few days ago, our soldiers trained in the largest air assault operation carried out by allies in Europe after World War II as part of the above-mentioned exercise. NATO's regional plans provide a much more precise demand signal for NATO, and they will change our militaries over time. The regional plans are and will remain living documents that can and will be updated as the situation requires. Additionally, NATO's entire exercise program is now focusing on large-scale collective defensive exercises. That means that the regional plans drive our operations, exercises, and investments. However, all this volatility, as well as ongoing conflicts, offer the opportunity to learn as we go, adapt, and strengthen ourselves. For Romania, Black Sea region security constitutes a tremendous opportunity to be part of a dialogue addressing vital challenges for our country in NATO. The reaction of NATO, allied nations, and most of the NATO partners to the latest situation at Romania's borders proves that the alliance and our strategic partners are committed to ensuring and imposing peace and stability in the volatile security environment. The measures are comprising of vigilance activities, augmentation of deterrence and defense posture, the strengthening of integrated air and missile defense through deployment of troops and military equipment, through the assistance programs for Ukraine, supporting them in successfully opposing the invasion. Romania's efforts are focused on the implementation on a national soil, not only the forward present solutions, which are in place before February 2022, but also the latest deterrence and defensive measures. These efforts will be coordinated with those implemented at the national level, as increasing the military capabilities, build mobility, provide host nation support for deployed forces. The latest development in the eastern proximity and the NATO and EU eastern flank call for a more political, diplomatic and economically active profile for Romania within the regional security process. Regional cooperation represents one of the main instruments to promote Romania's contribution to enhancing the security climate in the Black Sea region using Euro and Euro-Atlantic integration coordinates. This is influenced by the current conflict generated by Russian actions with a direct impact on the state's resilience. In terms of developing capability, Romania increased gradually the military budget allocated for the defense to 2.5% of the GDP. In this context, we consolidated the C2 multinational headquarters at brigade, division, and corps level, and invested in moving towards multi-domain operations in coastal defense, long-range fires, air defense with ballistic capabilities, as well as armored and naval capabilities. In this regard, we currently have over 13 endowment programs for major equipment, consisting mainly of complementing the Air Force with F-16s, while waiting for the full implementation of F-35 program. Main battle tanks, Piranha 5 troop carriers, HSAM Patriot missile systems, MLRS HIMARS missile system, TPS-77 radars, Naval Strike missile mobile launchers for coastal defense, Sandown class mine hunters, class 2 UAS. Romanian armed forces will continue to contribute to the overall efforts, missions, and actions within the alliance. At the same time, we continue to advocate for bolstering capabilities to ensure effective deterrence along the entire eastern flank. If you want a functioning deterrence against any challenger, then we, the allies and partners, should be much stronger than any challenger. Right now, NATO is stronger and readier than it has ever been before, and NATO continues to go stronger every day. There is no military challenger to raise against us. As Admiral Rob Bauer, chair of the NATO Military Committee, stressed 1 week ago during the Military Committee meeting, and I quote, "The integration of NATO and national military planning will enable us to do exactly what the NATO flag symbolizes. All allies will follow the same compass," end quote. I would conclude by reassuring you of our strong resolve to contribute to NATO efforts in the region and to be instrumental in the process of strengthening the deterrence and defense posture on NATO's whole eastern flank, thus contributing to the security of the entire North Atlantic Alliance. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, General Jacob. I will turn now to Major General Meade, and I would like to ask him to provide his point of view from the NATO operational level. And let me challenge you a little bit from the very beginning. What do you think? There are some voices mentioning that this is not the eastern flank, it's the eastern front. How do you tackle this one? Are you looking to the flank, NATO eastern flank or southeastern flank, or front? Go ahead, please.
Was the question was about south and east?
There are voices in our area mentioning that here is a NATO front practically, and not a NATO flank. Obviously, when we are looking and trying to analyze this from or keep a situational awareness on the 360 degrees approach, yes, we may think and speak about the flanks. But because some of the voices are speaking about Russian directions of attack, influence, and so on, is this, can we approach it as a NATO front, the south and east one?
Yes, I think we start with the threats, and I think it's something that Steve Pongton will build on more in terms of the strategic operations from Russia and how it acts and how those scenarios have driven our approach. But we have a very unified approach across the 8 battle groups into brigades and now into core structures across the land domain. I think there is more work to do in NATO's south and where we go with some of the ambition in our geographic bands and into Africa. But I think we do have a very well-developed 360 approach, which is about to get better with the evolution of Secure's plan, which will go to NATO again in November. So the evolution of Secure's AOR strategic plan. And I'll come back to some of that thinking as we go through. And as the junior member of this panel by some margin, and it being 7 o'clock on a Friday, I thought I would put some pictures up if we've got them. I'll just give them a second if they can get the slides up. I couldn't resist it. And I don't know if you've heard the joke about the Englishman, the Romanian, and the Italian. It's a good one, but we'll leave it for the moment. But and I didn't know General Jakob was going to be on the panel, but there we go. So my main point is going to be an optimistic tone about the reflections from regional planning. The way that nations can see themselves reflected in the regional plan is our regional plan. It's not a Naples plan per se, it's our plan. And what that means in terms of the mutual support with the other regional plans. But I think there's some pretty profound lessons there, and they are uniquely strong because of that, and because of the strategic direction that came out of DDA. This is one of the big ideas, the much more unified effort in the way we approach the military instrument and the way that links into the political instrument. So I think so far so good with the plans. They were going to refine them inevitably, but I think there are some pretty profound lessons as we move on to the more realistic challenge now of collective. So we've done collective planning and collaborative planning. Collaborative execution is going to be challenging. The ability to synchronize at pace, the ability to operate at mass and as warfighting headquarters and at scale, which I'll touch upon. And one of the key accelerators is going to be, how NATO by design are nations. How much do they design that into their national defense planning? How much do they drive interoperability across people? And the trusting is profoundly strong in this region, but also procedures and indeed procurement. So I think that's in Bulgaria. It's in Novo Selo in Bulgaria. I could have easily done the same picture, pretty much the same picture in Fokshani 2 years before that with the number of this audience. Okay, next one, please. So we'll get a broader reminder on the big ideas from Steve about DDA, but that's driven our thinking. And this aspect of strength v weakness. We don't want a neatly symmetric approach. We want an asymmetric approach where we line up all of those strengths in our doctrine, the 6 outs, which I still rather like, about what makes us a strong alliance. You've got to keep working at those. And they're really important, and that cascades into the way we've planned, the way we've looked at centre of gravity, the way we look at geographic readiness and domain advantage, and the way that we really do unify efforts across this mighty alliance. And I think the other aspect of that, which I have added to the slide, is never to lose sight of deterrence theory. And we've got good deterrence theory, we've got good deterrence principles which are shown there, because we've got to convey that strength, we've got to communicate credible and capable, and we're on a rapid journey there, but and this aspect of cognition and the way that we are, I think, getting much more intellectually and practically focused on the cognitive dimension as well. Again, it's a key element of the whole DDA design. Okay, next one, please. So I am a big believer in this adage, and this was a man that knew knew a little bit about multinational and coalition operations. But it's been breaking new ground because we've had 2 threats, 3 joint operational areas, 32 countries, 5 domains, and then you add SOF and enablement plans onto that. And then you do that strategic, operational and the tactical plans are still ongoing. And then you get a kind of idea of what that's meant in terms of the collaborative planning effort. And there's a number of people in the audience I see that have been a strong part of that. But there are I think, some really strong lessons about what that means, and then constantly planning. So we're already refining. We're going to take next week to secure our latest thinking on the Western Balkans O plan. Not having these distinct kind of aspects, but really kind of joined up thinking about the region, but then 360 as well. So I think so far so good. Some humility needed in terms of where we know we need to be better, but we're going to be iterating into that next year as we kind of sunset the graduated response plans as well. Next one, please. So as I talk about the outs, this is a big one that my Commander Admiral Munch is quite focused on in this interoperability discussion about where we focus, because he will always have a conversation with the nations and with the domains about what he calls the 4 key battles. It's in US doctrine in the latest joint warfare concept. It's well worth a read. There's a NATO releasable version of it. There's some really, I think, significant thinking in terms of operating at tempo, the information and C2 aspects of that, speed of decision, the way that we deal with an information age, the way we deal with big data. I think there's some enormous challenges there. Where are we going to go with open architecture and those kind of ideas, where we do have some challenges. And then how do we operate at real scale? The enablement conversation is often the first conversation now. I think people are not finding that novel anymore, that often the first discussion, and we've got some of the most powerful advocates, the Vorlaufers of that in the room here. But it's going to have to lead to some discussions about collective enablement. We're just not going to do that under policy of nations, logistics as a national responsibility. That's quite tired. And then fires, more gunners needed, definitely, growth area. But we're not nearly as interoperable in fires as we could and should be. And that's how we're going to get mass. That's how we're going to get concentration of force. Again, on the positive front, we have just developed a joint fires roadmap for the alliance, just been signed off by COSSHAPE. That gives us a direction of travel. It's not perfect, but getting our procedures, our interoperability, getting back to standardization, I think is going to give us, is going to make us accelerate into the outlast, out excel adage. Next one, please, and I will kind of wrap up pretty quickly. I do like the notion of set the theatre. How do you outpace? Because Russia has traditionally always viewed its advantage as being out-mobilized. Basically out-mobilize, escalate, and then de-escalate. Nothing to see here. Negotiate from a position of strength where basically the alliance becomes somewhat paralyzed. So I think these are really important areas that are under, and there's a lot of work going on in Romania, Bulgaria, Turkey, Greece, in all of these areas. But how do we get more sophisticated about indicators and warnings? I think we've got some good assumptions in the regional plans. We need to keep testing those. Resourcing ISR, joint ISR in the alliance is a perennial problem, getting that resource from nations, and we need to get better at that because it's a deterrence in its own right. I think we're in a good space with authorities. I think so secure standing authorities and the way that what is going to become the modernized alert and response system is implemented, but it's more than that. It's how are we going to operate in an urban environment, a clustered, and complex environment. And I think there's some environmental aspects that need a deeper dive. The brilliant work that's going on in terms of posture, with France coming in at battle group level, brigade level this year, and I think we're going to learn a lot of lessons, as many of them logistics and interoperability as anything else. But 2 years ago there wasn't a French battle group. They came in actually 2 days after. The Spearhead Battalion came in on the 26th of February and haven't really left in some sense. Bulgaria as well, I think they've made some giant strides there. And then capabilities where we know there be some dragons here, where we've had 30 years of underinvestment, but the hardy perennials of ground-based air defence, C2 and CIS, because we can't move our headquarters well enough, long-range fires, and I would say kind of mobility, the heavy equipment transporters and the like, for power projection. But there is a long list there that is lining up quite well in national defence planning priorities and the like, but boy, we need to accelerate into some of those positions. Okay, and I think that was, next one please. And sorry, and this aspect of mainstreaming partnering. So we've had a lot of speakers here about Republic of Moldova. That is our Commander Admiral Munch at the January ceremony for the regional exercise in Republic of Moldova. That wraps up in July. The only picture I could find of me in Republic of Moldova is in Kricheva vineyards, which I didn't think was appropriate, but is highly recommended if you ever get the chance. Very nice wine. But we're deadly serious about our support and to partners, equally Bosnia-Herzegovina, and we're also going to be doing some hosting of the Mediterranean dialogue teams this October. It is a mainstream J3, J5 activity. It really matters to us. You know, we'll look at NATO Serbia if the politics of that works itself out. And that is me, I think. Hopefully the pictures have kept you awake on a Friday night. Next slide, please. And of course, you know, the NATO concept of 2022, strategic concept, the Euro-Atlantic area is not at peace. That's my favourite building in the world, Salisbury Cathedral, after the Skripal poisoning in 2018. So it comes back to your opening point. You know, if we want peace, we do need to prepare for war.
Thank you very much, General Meade. Very interesting, and specifically because you walk us through the all the outs, which are really important points. I'm now heading towards Mr. Covington. Last on the list, but one of the most important speaker in NATO, most important and more valuable voices in NATO. I would like to, if it's possible, Mr. Covington, to offer us a strategist bird's-eye view on the NATO strategy and what is to follow. If you can focus also into the Black Sea region, that would be very highly appreciated. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, last speaker, last panel. It'll be very trying if I were to talk long. So I was asked to zoom out a little bit. And I think it's all the things that we've heard today are very impressive, what's going on nationally and collectively. And it is an incredible transformation of our collective defense. General Cavoli calls it the rebuild and the modernization of our collective defense. But I think I'd like to put it in a context that might be hopefully useful as we wrap up this excellent conference. So we're celebrating the 75th anniversary of NATO, but what are we really celebrating? It's a treaty. And the treaty lays out our core purpose. And that core purpose is in 3 sentences. It states fundamentally that NATO's core purpose is to safeguard freedom and the rule of law. The second sentence says NATO's core purpose is to protect the well-being of our populations. And the third sentence of that treaty says, unite in common defense to preserve peace. So that was the mandate given in '49, and there have been 2 fundamentally different expressions of fulfilling that mandate. One during the Cold War and one during the post-Cold War period. One dominated by collective defense of the Cold War, one dominated by crisis management and strategic integration of former adversaries in the post-Cold War period, a strategic partnership with Russia, pursued simultaneously as we try to address crisis management. But we're in the third expression of this now. We're in a change of era. This is not a crisis. This is not a short-term problem. Putin says it's going to be a decade at least. And the target is not just Ukraine. The target is the fundamental core purpose of the alliance. And they have made it very clear that this kind of Euro-Atlantic architecture, this political architecture, is unacceptable to them. So that constitutes a change of era, a change that requires transformation of our collective defense, a rethinking and a reorganization and a reposturing and a modernization of our forces to compete. Now, why is that important? Because great power competition is based on 4 elements: strategy on strategy, architecture on architecture, military system on military system, and military industry on military industry. That's how you have to compete in this change of era. So the modernization of our collective defense, the rebuild of our collective defense, is fulfilling the mandate given to us in the Washington Treaty. It's a different expression. And it's fundamental to safeguarding freedom, fundamental to protecting the well-being of our populations. And we are in a pretty good position. We have a strategy. It's called the DDA, the first strategy in 3 decades. We spent 3 decades without a strategy. We had strategic frameworks. Those aren't strategies. We now have a strategy that identifies what we do, how we do it, what our objectives are, how to preserve peace, how to deter, how to defend. All the nations are committed to it. All the nations are united by it politically. And all the nations are united by it militarily in terms of effort. Now, why is a strategy important? Because a strategy is a commitment to an objective. And the strategy links to the treaty and its core purpose. We are modernizing the architecture. We've spent many years looking at forces as though they were flat in our counterinsurgency operations. Now we know we have an architecture, joint forces sitting on top of the AOR, joint fires sitting on top of the AOR, integrated air missile defense, C4I, all the way up to air power and nuclear. But what does that mean? It means for NATO, 32 nations, 1 billion people, 15% of the globe, is one single defense space, united by one strategy. And the modernization of our weapons is going to improve that architecture. The military system, as John was talking, and my other fellow distinguished panelists were talking, the military system, we're making improvements in command and control, making improvements in our plans, making improvements in our orders, making improvement in how we function as a war-fighting headquarters at SHAPE and its subordinate commands. This is a substantial, fundamental change caused by the change of era. And General Cavoli and the senior leadership of all the NATO allies are leading our countries down this path because it's necessary, because our adversaries are organizing themselves on the same terms. And that's what's required to compete. And this is fundamental. It's a change of era. We are shifting out of the mentality of managing crisis into the managing strategic confrontation. And that's why everything that's been said in this panel and this conference is so important, because it is a fundamental change of era. And the 75th anniversary takes place at a critical time in that change. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Covington, for your insights. Just because these days we have in Bucharest the Black Sea Defense and Aerospace, I would like to address also you a question mainly related to industrial base. You mentioned it before, I mentioned it before, and I would like to, for the first two panelists to think in from the national perspective, and also, if it's possible, is very little on the operational side, but anyway, from the NATO side, do we have good enough, solid enough, complete enough dialogue with the industry? Do we understand each other the requirements in order to have and build a solid industrial base?
You want me to answer that question?
I want you all, if it's possible, but you can start it. Yeah, sure.
Well, I will start, but my answer will be very short. I am not deeply involved in the dialogue with the military industry, so I can't give you an accurate insight into whether or not the conversations are deep, comprehensive, and complex. I'll just say two things. It is the industrial requirement is there. It is enduring, and it is something that will be a fundamental part of our capacity and our deterrence power. So it does need to be organized as an instrument that contributes to deterrence, because that's how it's assessed and measured by adversaries.
Right, thank you very much. This was exactly what I was looking for, saying that we may have a very good strategy, but you need substance underneath. And one of the key factor in this substance is the industrial base, because right at this moment we know very well that after so many years after the Cold War, we don't have the required level of industrial production for defense. General Meade, some insight on that one?
Gunner. I can't offer much other than it's the ends ways means piece, and we've heard a lot through the last few days that we're not there in terms of, and we've seen it with 155 production, we've seen it on lots of metrics. 155 becomes this totemic one, but and it also can't be right that we find that we're not interoperable as we're supplying them into Ukraine. It's a country I know well from my last job, that becomes the test bed of our interoperability, and we find that we're not very interoperable. So I think that's not a good look. I think we've recognised that there's a lot of work going on, but I'm not an expert on what that means now in terms of the ramp up of the industrial base.
Okay, great, thank you. General Hoopis?
Just about two things. Let's say, I think it's critical to have a sustainability through this military industry, and it depicts that the NATO must and have to have a long-term prospect with regard to conflict. So that through this 2 years conflict, it's obvious that the industry was not ready to support the needs of a long-term conflict. It's something that needs to be, let's say, as a lesson learned from this. The other thing I strongly believe is that we need to focus on the lessons learned. Lessons learned from the conflict depicts that is technology-oriented, the industry needs to be focused to the lessons learned of the conflicts. Not only the Ukraine, but there are other conflicts that is still running. And sometimes this is, let's say, more focused to the hybrid threats, which is something that is more below the level of the conflict. And last but not least, I need to a little bit digging more in the trust environment, the alliance, because you need to realize that if you have an industry product that need to be serving the alliance, everybody through the alliance need to have these trust environments to the industry, that this will be used by all the members of the alliance. And this is something that gives me the last point of this, that is directly dependent to the innovation, which is something that need to be working more in the alliance, because through innovation we have the added value or the multiplier of the result of the operations. This is my points on this.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Please, General Jacob.
Thank you. I think I will approach this on three aspects. I was mentioning during the speech that we are running 13 endowment programs, major ones. What I did not tell you is that we also have many others on different stages of the process, from the drawing board to the contracting and acquisition. But what I say is, I think we don't do enough with industry, and I think we have to do more, both to develop elements of national defense industry, but also to create partnership. And I kind of very much liked what John Mead said about the out-partner. You can actually talk about out-partnering anyone else into the industry of our great alliance. And we are part of some of the coalition of capabilities that were developed lately. What I can also tell you is that starting last year, and that relates to the first point that I had with defense not being a military, having only a military dimension, the Romanian government passed a piece of legislation that requires that every endowment program that we do has to be aligned, of course, with the national interest, but also to have some impact. All those companies that come and provide us with the hardware to have an impact on the defense industry, and these are good prospects. Definitely, from the operator perspective, and as a former commander of various tactical echelons, I must say that definitely we need the proper gear in the proper time so we can train the soldier, train properly the soldiers, and mostly important, be interoperable, because otherwise we cannot execute the plans if we are not interoperable.
Thank you. We will now open the floor for a Q&A session from the audience. Do we have any questions from the audience? Okay. Yeah, no question yet. But I was, oh, okay.
I can't let Steve Covington out of here. Steve, one of the best presentations I ever heard was you about 2 years ago when you were describing Russia's decision-making and the strategic miscalculations they made and so on. Would you mind sharing that you can publicly today? I mean, what sort of calculations are they making right now, or have they made recently?
Thanks, Ben. I can always depend on you to get me into trouble. To be succinct, I think that the war against Ukraine was intended to break Ukraine, end Ukraine's quest to be inside the Western security system, and damage the Euro-Atlantic security system. So there are three kind of objectives in this policy that's currently rolling out in the form of a war against in Putin's Russia. That is a very complex challenge, and that is why it doesn't fit in the form of a crisis that is discretionary, that like we've had over the last 30 years, where you would apply limited resources, give a limited time mandate, basically restabilize and create a situation where the problem itself would either slow down and become more manageable or resolve over time. This is different. And this is something that I think we must remind ourselves constantly, because we are all still products of our own experience, and that crisis management era of thinking can actually not help you in addressing the strategic challenges of today. So I think the Russia problem is a strategic challenge in that regard. And therefore, it requires our unity. And this is exactly what's playing out. And this is what exactly the alliance is supposed to do. We are fulfilling our mandate, Ben. We are uniting in common defense in the face of a new challenge. To preserve peace, to deter, and to be defensive. And that is our mandate. And I think it's a very, very impressive. If you just take a little bit of a look back, 2020 is when the strategy was approved. We started implementing the DDA. The war started in 22. What's taken place over the last 4 years and a half is extraordinary. And a lot of hard work by men and women in uniform to implement the DDA strategy. And that is making us safer, and we're all working off the same kind of strategy that allows us to integrate and organize our nationwide defense. One final comment, just to keep dodging the question, Ben. The fundamental difference between what we did in the past and what we did today is that in the past, we organized highly ready national forces to participate mostly in out-of-area operations, and we connected them, so we had like a connected forces initiative. What we're doing now is nationwide defense, connecting the nationwide defense of one ally to another, nationwide defense to another, and then putting that under regional and strategic plans. So we are rebuilding and reorganizing, and it's all going on in the capitals, in the countries, and in Allied Command operations.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Covington. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, Paul, please.
Thank you very much. Just a very short question for General Meade. So, John, how do you think, is it possible to have a standing NATO maritime group in the Black Sea consisting completely of air and naval drones? And this would be in line with Montreux Convention. Thanks.
I mean, anything's possible. So I think we are very deep into some of the planning for the Black Sea and how that approach is being taken forward. And this is where national and sometimes multilats and trilats within a NATO framework can work, because I think there's some excellent work going on under the domain, under Marcom's lead, with Romania, with Bulgaria, with Turkey, about how that CTF and how that's going to operate, how we're going to learn the lessons from the way that Ukraine has kept the Black Sea Fleet, not just at at range and at reach, but has actually been very effective at, I think, 33% of that's now at the bottom of the Black Sea. So all I'll say is there is a lot going on there in terms of coastal defence cruise missiles, about trying to play catch up with our understanding of drone technology, which is, even as we've done the regional plans, drone technology has surprised us at just how quickly that's taken place. I think we were getting to grips with a swarming kind of aerial drones, but then maybe didn't see just how sophisticated the surface drones were going to become and how effective. So I'm slightly dodging your question because it's ongoing tactical planning at the moment. I think it's in good shape, and we're trying to learn the lessons. I think we're going to get more clarity on the way that those CTFs are going to work in the Black Sea, and the leadership, I think, initially under Turkey about how that plays out.
Okay, thank you. We still have time for one question more. No question. Anyway, I cannot close the panel without mentioning that today we marked 821 days of harsh aggression of Russia against Ukraine, 820 days of human losses, a lot of damages, and you know how the territory which was under dispute looks like. So I'm turning to my fellow panelists here and try to have a short answer from each of them, saying that what we can do more for Ukraine. But as it was mentioning during the other panels, we need to go a little bit more practical and more realistic, and not to stick with some political statements. We will let the political for the political people, but from the military point of view, how are we going to?
From the military point of view, I strongly believe that we need to stay them in this critical phase of this 800 days war, and that's why it is the critical, because I think this sustainability that is already mentioned by me, it's something that need to be obvious also in the field. So I think friends and friend nations and allies are for the difficult time, so we need to stand by them till the end of this war, and we hope for the win. But because from the other hand, we in parallel need to think that if Ukraine lose this war, there will be some next nations of us that will be the next target of Russia's aggression. So stay together, stay for the win of Ukraine. Thank you.
Well, there is no doubt in my mind that the victory in Ukraine is linked with our security and our posture. And what I will say is, if you are looking at the multi-dimensional support to Ukraine, multi stands for more, right? And there is a military dimension which I'm not going to expand, but it is one.
So I was fortunate enough to work with the Ukrainian Joint Forces Command in my previous job in ARC. I think we've got to stay connected organisationally as best we can, but just emotionally and understanding what's going on there and learning the lessons. But practically, we're going to get some big announcements, I think, out of the summit. That's their political decisions. And then we've really got to mobilise or put onto more of a campaign footing how we are going to train and equip. And we've got to have a more campaigning approach, and we've got to accelerate hard into that space, would be my practical view about how we're going to do that. And that's not easy. Training and equipping, and outside of Ukraine, this is going to be, is something that we are going to really need to accelerate into, because every day matters.
Well, I'm not in the military, so I can take a pass on this question. I think unity is everything, largely because autocratic systems and cannot experience unity the way we can. It's our number one powerful instrument, and that kind of unity speaks volumes, and that communication of political will is powerful as well. And that is something that needs to be continuously repeated about in this conflict, in this war, expressing what our political will is, what our end state is, and how we are united in its pursuit.
Appreciate. Thank you very much for your insights. I will try to wrap up very quickly this panel, and I will go only by keywords because we are already in delay. And I would say that today, you had the opportunity today to hear about the collective resilience, the coherent, and also the well-developed 360 degrees approach in NATO. We heard about the DDA, the strategy, and also the plans, the regional plans, strategic subordinated plans, and also the tactical plans. And also we heard about the hybrid threat that we are tackling every day, and touched upon the industrial base, which we really need to sustain all of our efforts, and why not some of the challenging questions like the SNMG into the Black Sea, which is really a challenging question. So I would like to ask my fellow panelists to remain on the stage until the closing remarks will be addressed by the CEO, Mr. George Scutaru. But before that, I would like to join you in a round of applause for our guys.
Thank you very much to all of you for this great event. 2 intensive days, more than 160 panelists and speakers. Thank you very much for your thoughts, for your assessments. And please come back to your countries, to your leadership, and convince public opinion and your military and political leadership to continue to support Ukraine. Because otherwise, next year, we will debate the consequences of this situation on Romania. We'll have Russia on the Danube mouth, or even worse, on the Prut River. It's not time for war fatigue. It's not time to think about how you can freeze the conflict. No, the frozen conflict is not an option. We feed the beast many years with our goodwill and money for cheaper gas, thinking that after 2008 or 2014, we'll have a long peace in Europe. I kindly invite you next year to come to Bucharest on 23 of May for the 9th edition of the Black Sea and Balkan Security Forum. Thank you to all of you, to MOD, to our sponsor, to our great team of University of Agriculture and the New Strategy Center. And please think what has happened now in the Black Sea. Black Sea is not Las Vegas. What's happened in the Black Sea doesn't stay in the Black Sea. Black Sea means connectivity. Black Sea means energy. Black Sea means food security at global level. And I'm very happy to see that we have a distinguished minister from Egypt, and you know very well the consequences of food security for stability of Egypt. Please come back, convince public opinion to continue to support Ukraine. And their invite is, please be Churchill, not be Chamberlain. Thank you very much.